hi everyone, I'm Ian. Thank you very much for making the time to come. And what we wanted to do with this particular session was, rather than me from a kind of technical side telling you about the wonders of what we do here at Charles Sturt University, I wanted to get people who actually use the data to talk about how they use the data, what it meant for them, and things like that. So you can see we've got four people here: Catherine, Rosemary, Elaine, and Andrew, and they're going to have a talk to you about the data that they've been using in their various roles and how it's helped them in those roles. But before they get started, I'm going to pass to my colleague Stewart, who's in the analytics team as I am, to give you just a brief rundown of CSU.
Okay, so the slide just gives a bit of context of Charles Sturt University. Now, you can see that we're spread across New South Wales, and I don't think any of us at Charles Sturt University are in the same room or even on the same campus right now. So even within the university, we are quite diverse. And you can see the spread of our students as well as our staff. We're not in one location. And 60% of our students are fully online. We don't see them. And this year, by the end of this year, we will have released over 6,200 Blackboard Learn sites within our learning management system. So that gives a bit of an idea and an overview of us as a university. Now, just to, for our international participants, just to realize that when we talk about a subject, then you'll understand it as a unit or a course. And when we talk about a course, it's the full degree program. Charles Sturt University, a session is, we have two main sessions, but 3 sessions. In fact, I think we have 6 sessions all up, but 2 of our sessions are the beginning of the year and then the middle of the year, and you might know them as either terms or semesters. We call our instructional designers, they're educational designers, and they're the very, very important folk who work alongside our teaching staff to put together our online learning subjects. Faculty and schools, they correspond to colleges and departments, and I think sometimes they're even called units in some universities.
Hi everyone, I've turned my camera off because I'm probably just in a room in the house and I'm not dressed very professionally today. It's one of the beauties of working from home, and I have a joke with my colleagues. As Stewart mentioned, we have various campuses across the state of New South Wales, and I'm fortunate to work at a place called Newcastle where there is no CSU formal campus, so I consider myself the head of campus at the Newcastle College for Charles Sturt University. So my role and how I got involved with Ian and this side of the university, I was tasked with undertaking an evaluation of a section of the associate degree in policing practice, and working also with discipline experts on reviewing the Bachelor of Laws with a focus on teacher and staff engagement. So what that means is the Associate Degree in Policing Practice is the recruit training program for all police in New South Wales. It consists of 2 years, 1 year full-time at Goulburn basically, and the second year they're probationary constables, they're out working and they're doing all of their study to attain the associate degree online. We'd had a major review, and in 2017 there was a significant change in the delivery of the Year 2 part of the program. So I was asked by the head of school to undertake an evaluation at the end of last year to see how things were actually going with that course. My other hat was I was working as the course director for the Bachelor of Laws, and with my discipline expert colleague Kim Bailey, we started looking at what was happening with the Bachelor of Laws. It is purely delivered online, and it has been going with our first graduates actually graduated 2 weeks ago. It's a 4-year degree, and we just wanted to see how things were tracking because we hadn't really had a close look at it at that stage. So there were a few issues that were coming up in both of the courses, and we gathered data, and like any good academic, I suppose, we wanted to basically gather data from various sources. So we had done student surveys, interviews with staff. We looked at admission data to see if there were any patterns with particular cohorts of students coming into the program, how they were tracking in the course, and of course our Blackboard analytics. So even at the start, with the student survey, Ian was able to assist with that because he was able to interrogate some of the data and suggest areas that we might want to include in the survey for the students. Can you push the button, move to the next one, Ian, please? Oh, I can do that. There you go, technology. There. Okay, so what did we want to know and why? So the Year 2 program being online, it had taken a totally different structure in terms of the associate degree, and we had included discussion forums, there were activities, checkout questions, and Q&A tutorials. So we really wanted to know what was working and why. The first question we asked the students in the survey is, do you prefer face-to-face or online delivery? And resoundingly, it was like 96% they preferred face-to-face. And I'm assuming that would be the case with colleagues who are on this webinar with me. Most students do prefer, if they can, to learn face-to-face. So when we were looking at the Year 2, the whole issue was engagement. Were we still having the engagement with the students? Were they still learning? Were they becoming better police officers? Now, the assessment results were telling us, yes, there was a higher percentage of students who passed. We wanted to look at the engagement with the online material. We started off with the material being delivered like drip fed, so to speak, but the students, because of their work commitments and working shift work, etc., requested that the whole of the curriculum be delivered at the one time. So we wanted to certainly look at the impact of that. We also wanted to look at discussion forums. We were hearing from the subject coordinators, like the teachers, that students weren't engaging that much on the forum. That was their perception. And again, this is where Ian's team was critical to say, actually, let's look at the data. What are we seeing? In terms of the activities, the same sorts of things. There was a feeling that there was that engagement with activities was waning. And the other really important thing was the checkout questions. We were asking students what they liked about it, what needed improvement, etc. So there was a lot of information there that we wanted to drill down, and to do that we relied on Ian's team, or Ian's team basically is Ian, to provide that information for us, because in all honesty, IT is not one of my strengths. Analysis of data, getting all the data is not one of my strengths, and the beauty of having Ian, and I know this isn't all about Ian, but for a lot of it, it is for me, is somebody who could interrogate the data and actually tell me what it was meaning. What we did find just in relation to that was that in terms of student engagement, when the changes first happened to the program, the students were really engaged, but over time, as students talked to each other, and because it wasn't an assessment item, some of the engagement actually started to dwindle. So what we've done is we're now revisiting how we can re-engage the students in that online forum. And it really leads to the next point, and I know I'm focusing on the policing one, I'll talk about the law soon. It really leads to the next point, which was critical for us, was to do with areas of staff development. Unfortunately, some people think that if you can teach in a classroom, you can teach online, and it's very different. And analysing not only the data, but the actual conversations and the way the staff were talking with students and the engagement highlighted areas where we've been able to now provide staff development for those who are teaching in those online forums. And it also showed us student progression through the subject. There was a definite link with the students who were failing the subject with engagement with the material or lack thereof. So coming to the law, there are a couple of subjects in the law degree where there was a high failure rate, and we were trying to work out why, because there'd been a lot of work done in terms of the development of the teaching material. Educational designers had been involved. So we were looking at things like, were there particular demographics with students coming into the program in terms of their educational level or ethnicity, etc., to see if there was any correlation there between their performance in the subjects. We also looked at, again, their engagement, those students who engaged more with the material, they did perform better in the subject. So that information was there, because the other thing with the law degree, we were also looking at where the subjects were offered and what subjects should have prerequisites, because when it was first started, there were a couple of prerequisites at the start, but other than that, the students could pretty well pick the order in which they did the study. So the information that we were able to glean from the data at CSU has certainly been, from an academic course director point of view, has been invaluable in informing how we make changes to the courses that we deliver. So that's me in a nutshell. So I'm going to put me on mute and hand back to Ian, and I'm happy to take any questions.
If there's any questions for Rosemary, I'm guessing you might be able to speak, or you can use the chat. The next speaker will be Elaine.
Excuse me. I'm a bit sick and hope I don't have to interrupt too many times. So welcome from my side as well. And it's really a great pleasure to showcase here how we use the analytics in a business context. So to give you just a brief overview, every 3 to 4 years we conduct a course review to make sure that all our courses meet the industry and students' needs and requirements. And currently, I am in a course review process for the Master of Business Leadership, and here was the first slide that we used in our kickoff that happened just last week. So we are really in the middle of this course review, and everything is very current. So this MBL, Master of Business Leadership, is now also the example I use to show you a few insights into the data and the analytics that we used. So when we start a course review, we bring together a whole lot of analysis, because we want to make sure that the whole course review team is up to date, what's going on within the course, because usually the team, which consists of lecturers and subject conveners, they just see their own subjects, or maybe they teach 2 subjects, but the whole course consists of 12 subjects. So they get an overview of what's going on. And in this first analysis, we want to know, for example, the progression rate, attrition rates, also our competitive position, and we also want to know the demographics within our course. So, for example, the age groups that are taking or studying our courses, and also gender. So after having analyzed the first step of the course, we analyze then further into the subjects or units, depending where you are. And there we also investigate similar things, so as well the progression within the subject or units, and also in particular the satisfaction. And that will be now the next step I would like to illustrate. So it is important that the students have a voice, as they are directly experiencing the delivery of our lectures. So for this, we provide the student with the opportunity to give feedback. And we call this instrument the Subject Experience Survey, SES. And going to the next slide, don't worry, you don't have to read the text, and that's on purpose. The main issue here is about the diagram. So the SES contains 18 questions, and there's also possibility to provide qualitative feedback. But for this presentation, we focus on the quantitative data. So here on screen, we have a selection of 4 subjects with bar diagrams, and these are part of the course review. So the top blue bar provides an overview of the satisfaction of the students for each subject, and the orange bars are the evaluation of the 18 questions. So this visualization shows that the 4 subjects are generally well perceived by the students. And how can we see that? You have a thin white vertical line indicating a threshold of 65%. And this threshold is the CSU's expectation across all courses and faculties. So in our delivery, we aim in each subject to get these 65% at least, and the more the better, of course. So besides this positive outcome, it also shows that there is room for improvement. So we have at least 3 questions we need to address, as they are below these 65%. And I would like to briefly dig a bit deeper now to compare one question between 2 subjects, and I will be focusing on the top 2 charts or graphs and these 2 subjects. And I will start with the top left one on the next slide. That's the one that was below this 65%. And this question with below 65% outcome was: the learning activities in this subject created opportunities for me to learn from my peers. So the student then answered to this question. So one way to investigate potential causes why this was rated quite low, we can use this social network analysis diagram, as this question 7 particularly focus on the interaction between students. So looking at this diagram, we see that there is an interaction between peers and also the lecturers, who is in the middle of this chart, so the blue dot in the very middle. So the question arises here: why do students feel that there was not enough opportunities to learn from each other? As we see, there is quite an interaction. So was it only maybe a small low-stake task or assessment at the beginning of the subject, or an activity that doesn't really connect enough to the students' needs in the subjects? So such question may be then, for example, investigated further amongst the team to evaluate the assessments and how we can improve them. And just to show you as a comparison, now we will switch on the second, that was on the top right before, to see that difference. So let's change the slide, and you can see quite a big difference between these 2 charts. So here we have an SES rate for this question 7 that was 80%. And when looking, and it's quite striking here, looking at the social network analysis diagram, it shows that it is much busier and also with less students. So there is much more interaction between peers than before. So this may allow the conclusion that based on more extensive peer-to-peer interaction, students acknowledge also the fact in their higher SES rates on this question. So now we would look into this subject, for example. What are the assessments? What are the activities in the subject? What are, for example, the learning and teaching strategies? And compare them with the example before, which was a bit less successful in this question. And so we would integrate then these learnings to improve accordingly. So that was one example. And then this one, I think Ian and myself, we really liked this one because it looks like a piece of modern art. When I saw this first, and we had a chat on this, and it was quite fun. We had the same impression on that. So we haven't stolen it on any art gallery. We just created it from our data. However, I have to say we didn't use live data for this presentation. We just used some others that we have because it's just important to show another aspect on analytics, how we can transfer them into business. So here we see this Sankey diagram, and Ian created one for each subject, so we could have a nice overview across all the subjects. So the purpose of this is to show the usefulness in the course review. So that means we want to know how the assessments are aligned. Are they scaffolded and also scaffolded properly? And also to look into students' progression. Additionally, we can also identify the grade distribution for each of these 4 assessments. So just as an example to point out, this Sankey diagram shows for each assessment the pathway of the students through their 4 assessments. So from assessment 1, you can see the students who got distinctions, then got high distinctions, and credits, and 1, that is the red one, the red bar in the bottom, did not submit the assessment, the second assessment. So the thickness of the line indicates the number of students. So more students went from distinction to credit, from assessment 1 to assessment 2, than from distinction to distinction. And looking at the whole picture, there doesn't seem to be a major issue as there is no dramatic downwards tendency. However, I would tend to look more closely into assessment 3, as HD that came down to distinction seemed to be back on HD in assessment 4, and credits that went up to distinction are now back to credit. So maybe there is some pattern within this assessment that we can improve. Also, it would be worth checking why the number of students did not submit their assessment. So that's quite a number at the bottom in red. Maybe we can also adjust there something to improve the subject or the assessments. Okay, that was my part from showcasing a bit the analytics to the business, and I hope I could show that in an illustrative way. And if you have now any question, I'm more than happy to answer them.
I'll just give some time for any questions. Unfortunately, Rosemary and Elaine have to go. They have a very important course directors meeting in about 5 minutes. So if there's any questions for Rosemary or Elaine, please feel free to speak up or type now, and they can answer them.
Or forever hold your peace.
Thanks, Timothy, and thanks, Christopher. That's a good question, PB. That is a struggle we do have at the moment to get the grades into Grade Centre as soon as possible. All of these were done after the session ended, so the grades were all entered. But we're hoping that as people get to see what's possible and maybe get to see that these diagrams and these visualisations can be used in session as well as out of session, that people might be a bit more willing to put their grades into Grade Centre straight away.
There was a question about subjects, but it went through too quickly. I couldn't read all.
So Elaine and Rosemary, how many subjects typically does your course include? Because currently, David, I'll talk about this towards the end as well, but it's a very good question. We're sort of trialing out these visualizations. We're sort of, Rosemary and Elaine, I don't want to use the term guinea pig, but I used it, but we're sort of trialling out visualizations on them to see what they think of them and to see if we could potentially be useful for other people as well. But I'll let Rosemary and Elaine speak to how many subjects their typical course has.
Oh, talk about put us on the spot. You go, Elaine, while I get my fingers and toes ready.
Okay. So in the postgrad and masters, which I just showcased here, the Master of Business Leadership, there are generally 12 subjects, and in the undergrads, the bachelor's degrees, there we have 24 subjects, or units as you call them.
Yeah, in our law degree, we've got the 24 subjects, and in the associate degree in policing practice, we only have about 12 subjects, but they are different credit point weightings. So some subjects are bigger than others, if I can explain it that way. The ones that I evaluated in the year 2 were both, there were 3 subjects. One was the equivalent to a normal 1.5 subject, and the other 2 were double subjects. And all the Bachelor of Laws are single subjects.
And basically, David as well, it's basically Elaine and Rosemary both came to me. We haven't done anything in our team to determine subjects or determine courses that as yet. I suppose we were quite lucky that Rosemary and Elaine and some other people have come to us for data.
And other people will be coming because I've spread the word.
Oh, thank you. So no sleep for me for the next few months.
I support that definitively, yes. No sleep.
Oh, no. Excellent. Oh, good to have job security then. That's great. Well, if there's no other questions, thank you for those questions. Elaine and Rosemary, you're free to stick around or free to go to your very important meeting. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It was a pleasure. It was great. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Sorry, Bill, I didn't see your hand up, but I see it lower. Did you have another question?
Yeah, just wondering again, do you guys have a common grading schema in the Blackboard grade center, or is it whatever you want to use, number value, percentage value, letter value, etc.?
This is where my knowledge may not be 100%, but we have 2 subject grading schemas, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, or the standard pass distinction, and that's what we use.
Okay, thanks.
So all the assignments are actually given marks, so maybe 15, 20, and to do that Sankey diagram, I converted them to grades.
Oh, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
So
then you convert it to the whatever grading schema that you use.
Exactly. So if a subject is only satisfactory, unsatisfactory, I don't know how good the Sankey diagram would look that way, but there'd only be 2 grades. But but we'd have something like that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ian.
No worries. Thank you for the question. Well, now I'll pass back to Stewart, who's going to talk a little bit about Analytics for Learn at CSU.
We released Analytics for Learn in July of 2015. And within CSU, it's known as Site Analytics. And each of our subject sites have a link in the bottom part of the subject menu of the site, down in the control panel section, that is. And there's a Site Analytics link there, and that goes into the A4L reports. So we have 5 reports, as you can see on the screen there, Site at a Glance, and some call that Unit at a Glance or Subject at a Glance, and then that can drill down to an individualized Student at a Glance report. We also have Site Access and Grade Scatter Plot, drill down to the student average compared to the subject, student as compared to the subject average, Also the matrix that shows the activity and grade, and a customized report for content access statistics. So we can then work out what is the data, access data that students, showing student accesses to our different content within that site. So I'm sure that most of us would be familiar with these different reports, but certainly if you're not, then chip in with a question. We also have the SQL Server reporting services, and generally speaking, these web reports are not made available to teaching staff, but they are made available to them on a request basis. And so we have the common set of the SQL Server reporting services, and we've added on, I think it was towards the end of 2016, we added on analytics for analytics, so we could monitor the uptake of these different reports. We also have the pyramid analytics capability. This is not made available to staff, but we use it within our own team, and we provide the data and visualizations as we have done for Elaine and Rosemary. And we also have a great variety of dashboards that our teaching staff and also our educational designers would use, and others as well, on a needs basis. And we have, particularly Ian has put them together on a request basis, on a needs basis, for just doing the sorts of things that Elaine has just finished explaining. In terms of analytics for Learn at CSU, we are probably at that building capacity. That's our current phase. We had an introductory phase when we first introduced the A4L at CSU, and that took roughly 18 months. It seems perhaps a long phase for introducing something, but on the fourth dot point there, you'll see that we had some what we call Pathfinder and pilot programs, and they were also part of that introductory phase, and that's why there was that 18 months. And pretty standard in terms of rolling something out, the awareness stage, getting people ready to use them. Right now we are at the building capacity for using analytics for learning analytics in general. We still have workshop sessions in response to the needs that we have identified and teaching staff have passed on to us, and they typical in workshop sessions. But we also have partnership arrangements with our schools and also for professional learning series, and these are on an ongoing basis. So that gives a bit of a context, as well as the introductory demographic overview that we gave, and that will then allow our next two presenters, Andrew Callahan. And Andrew, I'll pass over to you, and you can now explain how you have used learning analytics and how you're building on what is provided within CSU.
Cheers, thanks, Stewart. Yeah, so I guess I'm new to CSU, relatively new, so probably coming up to about 3 months in the organization, and into a brand new role, which is working in a team which is looking at kind of the transformation of online learning. And that is within one faculty at the moment, but again, it's a team which consists of analysts, learning designers, an online editor, very much looking at the end product that's coming out of the process, and a few other kind of discipline experts as well, and then working with the academics who work alongside us within that process. And I guess what I'm using Blackboard Analytics for, it comes into using data analysis to inform design workshops. So part of that process, and I'm really happy to say that CSU sees data as one of the people sitting at that table in a meeting, looking at what are we going to do to improve a subject or a course or units for international people listening. And so it's about bringing that data to the workshops, building up a huge amount of student data, also doing qual stuff, so a lot of interviews with students and teachers. And as was said earlier, it's about triangulating that information to bring it, not to create the decisions, but to ignite discussion in those workshops. And the other part then, which is, probably a bigger part of my role, is measuring the impact of the changes that are going to be made to these subjects as we go through this. So my background is in evaluation, also, data analytics, visualization. But for me, it's about looking at the pre and the post, and what was the change, and how has that affected student experience, academic experience, and if you want to look longer term, very much looking at progression rates, attrition, and kind of perception of even the marketplace to the courses that we've looked at. And so we're implementing CSU's online learning model, which essentially is available through our UImagine website, which is a part of CSU. And so there's essentially 7 domains that we look at. And if you look at you won't be able to see the actual visualization very well here, but essentially with the coloring on the side going from light blue to dark red is the intensity that we work at in individual parts of that model when we're working in individual subjects. And so as we go through this process, I guess for me, I've been given access to Pyramid, and I've been given kind of more access than say a lot of other people in CSU will be given to the analytics side, which I'm very privileged, and I can't believe I've been given that kind of trust. But people made these decisions. Ian especially has been super helpful in guiding me into the use of the information that I have access to. So what is Blackboard's role in this project? So it's about the kind of data that all of you, if you're in the analytics side, use already. We're looking at content accesses. How long are they accessing stuff for? What are they accessing? When it comes to the forums and this, as was shown by Elaine, the social network analysis, I think that's fascinating. And even in these workshops, to be able to show a set of academics, here's the social network analysis of all of the forums from your different subjects or units, and they look at them and they suddenly just kind of go, but that one is far more active. What's that person doing to make theirs so active? And for me, from an evaluation perspective, we want to be able to go back to them at the end of this process once their new subject or new unit has run the next time after being transformed, to essentially kind of be able to go back and show them the difference in how those interactions hopefully have changed and changed for the better, is obviously our goal. Desktop and mobile accesses. So, a lot of this is driven by, transforming online learning. A lot of it's driven by changes in the way people are using online learning, right? People want to be able to do things when they're, especially when you're working full time. They want to be able to be on a train. They want to be able to listen to audio, short, podcasts of lectures. They want to be able to access the forums on mobile. And actually, a lot of people these days want to access everything on mobile, which is, not possible for all things. So we want to look at how that shifts over this time as well. And then external links. So again, from an analytics purist, I would absolutely love to keep everybody in the sandbox of Blackboard, but obviously, we use different technologies in our learning experience, and they will, be sent or fired out of Blackboard to external links. So we want to look at where they're exiting, and then trying to follow that trail to the external link and back in again to understand that complete learning experience. I guess the goal for me is about comparing subject session offerings. So session is a unit. So if a unit or subject session is a term in international terms. So if I'm looking at a unit and over a term, and I want to look at our subject over a session, and I go back to that in a year's time when we've changed that subject matter, and we've done all of these changes to teacher presence, to social, to collaboration, etc. I want to be able to essentially look at a pre and a post, to look at how it was before, how it is now, looking for increased engagement. So has engagement overall increased on Blackboard, on the Blackboard site? has the engagement with the new, how is the engagement with new content that wasn't there before, or where we've made design changes, even just to the basic layout of our Blackboard sites? Has that changed the amount of time people spend in different areas of the site as well? Increase the collaboration, so changing in how students are collaborating, and is it meaningful? So, you know, you can have a super lively social network within a forum, but is it a meaningful learning experience? And actually, would it be better to have a lower level of activity, but to have stronger subset groups of people interacting with each other and really getting I guess, an online kind of group experience? Ease of use. So, and the ease of use may not necessarily come out of analytics, but kind of user testing. So looking at how students perceive the ease of use of these newly designed subjects, looking at agile adaptation. So when we, you know, about that mobile adaptation, looking at how that stuff has transferred over to mobile. Are people using it? How does the usage compare to the old version of it? How does it compare to other subjects, to create the business case for us to continue this work across other courses and faculties as well? And then the student experience, you know, has this changed since the last offering? Probably more importantly, students who are in a course or in a degree who have experienced some of the courses that we have, you know, transformed, or some of the subjects or units that we've transformed, do they notice a difference? Do they actually notice that, you know what, the subjects that I'm learning this term or this session, they look really different to last time, and they look better? Is the true test of the project that I'm working on, I guess. And just to finish off, I mean, I guess the challenge I have, and being new, and I'm, you know, getting used to terminology, getting used to using Pyramid. I'm a Tableau user. I, you know, absolutely just love the ease of use of bringing data together, and I'm getting my head around different systems, and then getting my head around the multitude of systems being used across the university. And this is a very short version, but I guess 4 of the key technologies that we're using are Blackboard, Smart Sparrow for adaptive learning, Panopto for video, and H5P for integrating stuff into Blackboard as well. And I guess the challenge, and then we've got other tools just covered under that other generic title down there. But like, I'm trying to see the total student experience in what we're doing. And I guess the challenge is, you know, and that's what I look forward to working with Ian and, you know, Stewart and across the university, is how do we bring all of this information into a single story of student experience, essentially? And that really is where I am at now, is kind of like, how do I see somebody exiting Blackboard to go to a Smart Sparrow, and how do I track and make sure that I can see them coming back in? And how has that changed the way they then interact with different resources within the Blackboard site? And things like that. So I guess that's an overview of where I am. I find, you know, a lot of the stuff super useful within the analytics in Blackboard already. You know, I'm fascinated. One of the most fascinating things I looked at when I first started was, when are students accessing, you know, anything on sites? And, you know, especially say in an MBA where everybody is essentially a full-time employee. The funny thing I notice when I go in and look at that data is that most people access stuff Monday and Tuesday mornings from 9 to 3 in the afternoon is like a hotspot of activity for people in there. So people are doing it while they're in their, you know, professional roles. They're making time, you know, also is obviously setting up on a Monday or Tuesday, or guilt from not doing something at the weekend potentially. But, you know, something like that was just fascinating to begin with. And I guess that's where I am now, but I'm really looking forward to that kind of journey I'm on. And, you know, we'll see where we go with that. Yeah, so that's everything from me. If anyone has any questions, and obviously you can also get in touch after this as well. All our details are there.
Thanks, Andrew. That was great. I'll now pass on to our final presenter, Kath. Also, or Catherine, maybe.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks everybody for having us today. So, as already highlighted by my colleagues so far, there are various data analytics tools available equally to teaching academics as well as learning and teaching service and support staff. So in my role as a lecturer in learning and teaching, I often use the various dashboards to triangulate the status and state of any given subject, specifically to cater to design reviews and analysis. Um, this customized dashboard that I'm going to show you today was actually designed specifically for my needs by Ian and his team, um, and is by no means the end all and be all of dashboards. But however, it is a good example of how dashboards can assist in subject development and ultimately impacts on my practice. So the impact of dashboards to my work on subject design and delivery, as well as mentoring and coaching, teaching teams and staff, I see it as a fourfold process. So the first fold would be it's a conversation starter. So it helps with starting conversation with subject teaching teams. Secondly, it's an advocacy and advice tool. So it provides me with evidence and visual narratives of what is going on in a subject. Um, it becomes a part of reflection and review, as already illustrated by my colleagues in the previous sections of this presentation. So in preparation of the subject, it's used during the delivery of that subject in a session and at the end as evaluation. And that leads me to the last stage of what I call my care plan. It becomes a safe space to look at how students engage with the subject, the delivery, and it also helps teaching academics reflect on their own professional practice. So it becomes a very valuable evaluation tool. So I just thought I'd give you just an overview of the dashboard that Ian created for me. This is the lay of the land. Uh, um, what you see when you log in is various areas in Blackboard and the tools that are used for each subject. And it's based on the idea of providing my colleagues, well, the people in my role, so lecturers in learning and teaching, an eagle's eye view of the subject. So you can view it on their own or across semesters. It's also a great way to view subjects that are potentially delivered in the same semester as part of an overall course design. One of my most favorite tools is probably this one. This is the heat map of activity. So on the left, you have the heat map for student activity in Blackboard when they access the subject site the most, and on the right, you have the times that the lecturer accesses the site. Now, in this specific example, where online tutorials are scheduled on Thursday evenings, you will see that the students access the site an hour before. So there's real activity in accessing readings, creating forum posts, writing their blogs, downloading material. And during the delivery of the subject, I encourage the lecturer to reply to forum posts the day before the scheduled online tutorial, so Wednesday night. We found that we got more engaged discussion on the day of the online tutorials, and students were actually quoting each other because there was this hive of activity in the discussion boards before the online meeting. So this was an eye-opener for the lecturer who couldn't visualize how he could translate his teaching practice from on-campus to online. Recently, I've been working with Ian to pull out data from forums that show strengths of peer interaction. So this data, which Ian kindly pulled out for me, has informed many of our lecturers' practice. So these are just examples of how learner data helps with shaping conversations with teaching teams that I work with. It allows me to provide informed advice and advocacy, and later it helps with reflection on the use of specific tools such as forums. Um, by the way, I often encourage the use of forums for both online and on-campus classes, and it can reveal to teaching academics that these online spaces don't necessarily belong specifically to their online classes, and visualizing the impact and interaction is quite key to that kind of strategy. And finally, one of the quick wins in using the dashboard is this example here. In one subject I worked on, we were finding that students were asking for locations of files and readings in folders created in Blackboard. After a quick review of folder depth and number of clicks, we rehashed the content areas. So clicking would be minimized and content was quickly accessed. If you can see on the bottom left where number of previous access was 23, in the most current semester shown by my little monster there pointing, um, you can see that students access the same content folders 515 times. So this is real evidence of how learning analytics conversations and applications of applications impact on teaching practice. So that was just a quick kind of overview of how Ian and his work, learning analytics, and pretty much the adaptive learning and teaching services has impacted and really kind of grown my own practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Kath, and thank you, Andrew. Kath, we had a question from PB about a correlation between forum engagement and grades. I don't think we've looked at that yet, have we?
At this stage, no.
No, that's something for us to be looking at. If you've got any question or further questions for Andrew or Kath, please go on. I realise we're almost at the end, so thank you for sticking with us. For those of you who might want to know how these things were done, that gives you a rough idea of where the data came from, where it was where I'm currently manipulating it in, and how we're visualising the various aspects that you've seen today. It is currently a manual process. The plan is that maybe we see what academics and people like Kath and Andrew really like, and then we can maybe look towards getting a project to automate some of this, because if every course director and every lecturer in learning and teaching came to see me, I think this little team would be swamped. So we'd have a bit of trouble fulfilling all the criteria. So that's the sort of things we're using. And as I said, we are looking in the future to bring in things as PB said about grades, also some demographic information, other information to try and work out what is successful learning as well, and continue to present these. Thanks, Timothy. I was going to guess, because we did say help us Blackboard, you're our only hope. But we are looking as well to continue to present to the university community to see what we can do and get feedback on what works and what doesn't. Rosemary's gone, so I can say that now she's gone. But when I first showed her an SNA diagram, she wasn't at all impressed. She just told me, just give me a paragraph of text. And that shows that, not everything is going to suit everybody. Some people like those diagrams, some people don't like those diagrams. And that's one of the most fun aspects about my job, is working out what people want and what they need and presenting the analytics in a way that suits them and the story they want to tell. So there will always be a need for custom analytics, I think, because people are going to want different things, or people are going to want a paragraph of text. So it is an exciting time. If you want to get in touch with any of us, all our details are there, and all of us are more than happy to have a talk to you. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them. And thanks again for sticking with us.